And just on your point there, that if any man hits a woman, because the misunderstanding there is that domestic violence is just about the physical, but at times we don't take into account that
the psychological
and
emotional
financial
abuse,
deprivation and everything is actually domestic violence. And you just made a very interesting point that I just want to follow on with Itai, that tradition, culture, religion, have got a huge bearing on how we perceive women, and the socialization process has actually impact on how men and young boys, perceive women. Is this something that's happening in Ireland at all? Because we seem to be hearing that it's happening in Africa everywhere. But is it happening among Irish people or in Ireland or in Europe in general?
Well, I'd say to a great extent, the issue of domestic violence is probably magnified because of people's immigration statuses, that they have when they come here. So, for example, you have a situation whereby the male is the person who holds the, work visa or work authorization that allows him to work. And the wife, as the immigration regime stands, does not have an access to maybe a spousal visa. Now, they're trying to change that bit by bit. But you get a situation whereby the husband is earning 60,000 or whatever, a high amount of money. And the wife is doing nothing. So she's at home, she's reliant on the husband to give her money to go out to shop, just make sure that the household is well looked after. That, again, creates that I suppose, imbalance in terms of the power dynamics in the family. Jean-Pierre here also mentioned the situation of people in the asylum process, whereby they're not allowed to work, they're not allowed to go to school. That creates another, I suppose, frustration. I'm not trying to get an excuse for men who perpetrate domestic violence on their partner's part. That creates a situation whereby the men feel very powerless. They're sort of what's the term for it? I mean, they feel that they are no longer the breadwinners in the family, and that, unfortunately, the frustration is then borne out on the family, not just the wife, but also the children.
I just want to hear from the audience, because we seem to be hearing that culture, tradition, religion, and economic circumstances can actually contribute to domestic violence in a huge way. And the general belief would have been that women, are bearing the brunt of domestic violence. But what we're hearing is that when you cross to the other side of the waters, men begin to be victims of domestic violence. I just want to hear from the audience. What is your own opinion on this? What you're going to say here with
Barry is my name. I suppose I feel offended on behalf of women in our society and the women here that our discussions keep coming back to the very occasional incidents of violence perpetrated by women on men. And I think you're wasting a golden opportunity to use our time here together today to address the real issue, the main course, which is the violence perpetrated by men on women, whether it's in the marital situation or partnership or any other intimate setting. Also, I really can't believe what I'm hearing from our brother here on the panel, who describes Igbo culture as a paragon of domestic bliss and virtue, and that he's almost expressing shock and awe at the prospect of a woman being beaten by an African man. I find that almost fantasy in my experience of Africa, of domestic violence issues, and I'd be very interested to hear some honest remarks in that area. I think from my own understanding of Africa and African culture, and we hear it repeated here today by a young woman, that the man is the head of the household. I think that statement is erroneous to most European thinking. And I think it almost gives a license to a man, because he is the putative head of everything in the household, that it also almost gives him a license to abuse his nearest and dearest, whether they be his wife or his children. I think that notion needs to be scotched.
My name is Cynthia Marto. I'm a mother of three. And coincidentally, I'm Igbo as well. And I'm really shocked at what Emeka said, that the Igbo culture abhors or takes care of women who are abused. It's terrible what women go through as mothers, as partners in any relationship. And also hearing from the lady who said she was married to an evil man. A lot of women have been emancipated coming to Ireland and knowing that they don't have to be in a relationship that they're going through very, very abusive, relationship. you have to cry out. And once you cry out, you'll be helped. You could go through counseling, by somebody who tells you what to do. But I'll tell you solemnly that this domestic violence is as a result of power and control. And when a woman becomes financially dependent and the man's role is reversed, then there's a problem. But like the young lady said earlier, where there is a relationship, where there is communication, respect above every other thing. You respect me for what I am, and I respect you for what you are. But not that when you are financially buoyant, you look down on me and I'm oppressed. Then when the role reverses, then I'll take that position as well. And that's the way it works. So until we are able to find ourselves on the neutral ground where we look at ourselves as business partners, as partners in progress, and not because you're up there and I'm down there, then you have no regards for me.
German Muslim Council of Ireland. I think so. We are forgetting one key point here, which is in education. That contributes towards a lot towards the domestic violence, especially in pertaining to the third level countries or underdeveloped countries there, where the boys and the men are given more chance of getting an education as compared to a woman. For instance, in this forum, there is a solicitor sitting, there is a man accountant sitting, there are two doctorates sitting. Can I ask in a female audience, is there any accountant sitting? Is there any solicitor sitting there? Or is there any PhD or medical doctor sitting there? So problem rises from grassroots is an education. If they get an education and a fair chance of an education, I think so they would be much more helpful in fighting against the domestic violence.
Another point that I heard there is that it's one thing to have legislation in place, it's one thing to socialize your children in a way that fights against domestic violence, but it's another to actually enforce what the legislation and the values that you instill into that child. So it is actually imperative on parents to make sure that we instill, but we also enforce. I just want to ask Jean-Pierre to respond to the contributions from the floor.
Yeah, we have to understand, men and women, that women are very, 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 I would say, essential to this world. That's one thing. That's one thing. Even a man couldn't come in this world without women. So we have to understand that. The other thing is to say is that, violence is very basic kind of instinct, animal instinct. Now, if you stick on violence, you stay at animal level. I think education is very important.
Yeah.
But I also think the way you were brought up in your family by your parents, the way you were brought up, it's also vital.
I just want to revert back to Omeka, who was under siege considerably
Exactly.
from the floor. I just want you to respond in a very short time.
Yeah, I think I was completely misunderstood. I meant to say, and that is what I'm saying, and I started on the premise that our culture is against domestic violence and that no man has any justification to perpetuate violence against a woman on the basis of culture. I made that as, if you like, I flagged that off, that we need to know where we're coming from. We do not support it. Now, I didn't say that the Igbo culture was, one beautiful culture that, where you don't have any violence at all. No. So I think I need to be applauded. You need to clap for me for reminding us about our culture and not attacking me. I am speaking up for the women by saying that there is no cultural justification to hit a woman.
Okay. I just want to revert back to the audience with the question about the bride price. Does the bride price at all have any bearing on domestic violence? the concept that when I pay something for you, you are my property, you're the family property, I can do whatever I want with you.